And the strategy was always divide and conquer and fund fake groups and create fake narrative and control media in order to manipulate, divide and conquer, weaponize racial tensions, weaponize religion in order to make sure that nobody could unify around their resources. And that was always the strategy. That was the post-Bretton Woods world order. That's how the dollar became the world reserve currency. It was propped up by proof of weapons, death, destruction, violence, rape, pillaging in order to prevent competition. And now that very same force, those that profited from it, that managed to vassalize the US, EU, and UK, are strategically weakening. And they're using the same tactics that they used to weaken the Middle East and weaken the global South. And they're using it against their own people right now. The same colonial tactics. Divide and conquer. They use that to carve up the Middle East. And it looks like, from what I'm seeing in Britain, from what I'm seeing in Europe, and from what I'm seeing in America, is this being used as well. And it looks like they're going to use the same strategy because GCC in Saudi Arabia is going to be the new power brokers in the region, and they'll get rid of Israel, because Israel was just about radicalizing the Jewish people into believing that they were fighting for a worthy cause when they were ethnically cleansing the Palestinians. And now we've got to get through all of this stuff because they use that in order to create a fake war on terror to fund the groups that were the militias that were funded by the West in order to steal the resources from the Middle East and from Africa. And now they partnered and built power, and there was enough resistance against that where finally China was able to come along, build BRICS, unify with the GCC, and put together the terms and conditions that lead to the expulsion of US from the region. But now we have this non-stateless power called BlackRock that has vassalized. And now there is no US government. There is no UK government. There is no European government. They have a deep state mechanism, the layer 3 thing that I've always been sharing in other videos. Layer 1 is the printing of money for the shareholders of the Fed. Layer 2 is the intelligence network that launches black op criminal covert operations for the benefit of corporate power and creating funds that are funneled in a money laundering network so that you can have money that sits outside congressional, parliamentary, fake democracies and fake capitalism. And the third layer is the government, and the government is a vassal for that power structure. And now that power structure has become more and more powerful because of the Federal Reserve System. And that's why we are in a decentralization versus centralization mission. And that's why they can commit a genocide right in front of us and then accuse South Africa that was defending from the genocide and push the narrative into saying they're committing a white genocide in order to turn crimes into racial narratives and religious narratives so that social media can be used and media can be used in order to get people within the West to hate each other, fight against each other, and they can pay agents. Yes, Jordan Peterson, we see what you're doing with these different types of narratives that are being pushed through. We can see what's happening here. It's the same playbook that was already the West was doing on the rest of the world. It's the same one that was put in Ukraine, divide and conquer. It's all these different narratives that we're seeing on social media. You know, the Jewish conspiracy, Jewish rules the world. Zionists are in a fight for their survival because Jewish people need protecting. Protecting from who? Protecting from America, or Europe, where many of the immigrants came from originally. Are you saying it's not safe enough in your country? Why is that? Is it because you're fueling white nationalist movements? Is it because we're fueling all these different narratives because people are trying to figure out why they're broke? Because of this theft? because of the debt-based Ponzi scheme, because different operations are used to serve big pharma, like shutting the whole place down and then forcing everyone to inject themselves, where the share price pumps like crazy and now is 95% below. And who's already borrowed the money from Bank of Japan to make that? This is a criminal network, and it requires. And you always would use the weaponization of the different faiths. And now you're pushing out that narrative of that the Muslims are taking over and they want to implement Sharia law. And people who have been in these wars and watched their children and parents and grandparents killed by the same people that were saying they were defending democracy, that turned against their own people because they don't give a shit about you. And then they create Operation Mockingbird in order to pay the media and say that anyone that finds this stuff, call them conspiracy theories, make them feel weak, weaken their mind, psychologically destroy them, make them feel like they're speaking absolute rubbish because these operations happen behind the scenes. UK was always the beta test, and we saw what they needed to do when they wanted to have border policies, manipulate politics through racial tensions, create civil unrest by taking the people that were affected by these policies of stealing people's money and making them choose between eating and heating, and then fueling religious tensions. And then what happens this week? Suddenly, 2 Israeli staff at the embassy are murdered in Washington. One of them is a German Israeli that worked for the IDF, still does, maybe. I haven't had too much time. I don't have a theory on what this is right now, but I'm suspicious by it. That's all I'm going to say right now, because I don't have enough information to know. And then we're told that his Christian girlfriend, because we have this Judeo-Christian relationship, and the Muslims are the radicalists that are killing people, and we have invaders in our border that want to implement Sharia law and take away our freedom as a result of the false flag operations that the CIA, Mossad, and MI6 created, like 9/11, by having their CIA agents that justified wars and led to this fake war on terror where you're weaponizing all of these different faiths in order to psychologically traumatize people. Suddenly we're told that the alleged shooter, which I have maybe real, maybe not, is shouting "Free Palestine." And look, I'm not going to say whether this is a false flag or not, because I don't know, but I do know the patterns. But even if it's not, you know, there'll be plenty of conspiracy theories and the truth will be fought in the end, and we'll find out what's happened. And you'll tell us that any false flag didn't happen because you never admit it and never release the files like the Trump administration said they would. They won't release those files. The Epstein list still isn't here. But it would not surprise me if it was a false flag operation. I'm not going to say whether it is or not because I don't know, quite frankly. But let's just say that it's not. Let's just say it was a lone gunman and was politically motivated. And I'm not saying I think it's a bad strategy if you're politically motivated and you turn to violence. And I'm not condoning any of that violence. I think it will work against it. In fact, it is being weaponized. This is just a narrative that they want to utilize. They don't care about the deaths. They have this high ground saying, oh, we care about preventing anti-Semitism that is manufactured and created. But imagine if you, for 600 days, have been watching a genocide, as we all have. And I'm not talking about the fake media version. I'm talking about the real version. The one that where you actually see the genocide that was created by Israel, which is a US proxy, in order to determine what the region actually looks like, that led to this multipolar world order. And it was the most documented genocide that we have ever seen, where every single day we have to watch graphic images of burnt children. And I'm not talking about Jewish children. I'm talking about Palestinians. Beheaded children. I'm not talking about the fake news that there were. I'm talking about the real ones, which is the Palestinians that we've been seeing. We've been seeing the prisoners in Palestine with protests around right to, I'm not going to say that word, sexual violence and everything that we have seen. And that it has been the most documented genocide in history, where we have had to watch things that I never imagined I would ever have to watch. I, for one, know the impact that this has personally had on me. Daily massacres, daily gaslighting, daily lies. We're being told that it's a complete opposite of how it is. Right now, just now, today or yesterday, whatever it was, this week, Israeli soldiers just shot European diplomats. Massacres every single day. Hundreds are happening right now. Over 60 days of starvation. There's children, babies that are there looking like, you can see all their bones right now. And they're pretending we're letting in tons and tons of aid when the world knows that that's not happening. Oh, Hamas is subdiverting them. We know the truth. And you've got to make sure you understand the truth. Because what they did there and what they're doing to the Palestinians, I always said, this will be utilized against you if you don't stand on the right side of history here. This is the beta test. I believe it's being used right now, and they're seeing and beta testing what they can get away with. Israel's killed more journalists so that it doesn't get reported. Netanyahu right now is explicitly with his cabinet saying in no short terms that they need to eliminate all of the Palestinians, completely wipe them out. This is not the language that they were using in the beginning. The South Africa case said everything that they were saying that led to the rulement that this is plausible genocide, and it will be ruled as genocide. And that's why this is being distanced against itself. Because we had to watch this. In talking about the largest amounts of gaslighting, obvious. And if you're not paying attention and you're just watching the media, and everybody knows it at this stage, there is no blown up every hospital, targeted and killing nurses, doctors, so that they can't get the treatment that they need, deliberately preventing water, electricity, everything from getting in. This is not about, and we know what the negotiations were. Hamas said that they would enter into a negotiation, return all the hostages. The Israelis protesting in Israel right now know that they're protesting because they know their government doesn't want the hostages returned. They want them ethnically cleansed. They want them genocided. They want to do whatever they can get away with. And at the very same time, as us having to witness this, we have to watch Trump invite the South African president and accuse him of genocide while they're launching the case against the genocide. Do you know what this does to people? Do you know what this does to people? For 600 days, they have put their life on hold to try and make people realize what's happening here. While Trump's pretending to be outraged against this white genocide, theatrics. Do you know what this does to people's mental capability, psychological strength? It's pure gaslighting designed to anger, designed to drive mental problems, designed to take people on the edge and drive them to the very type of behavior that they would never imagine themselves doing. This was people that were already, after the mass injections, the lockdowns, the inflation, the global financial crisis, the wealth, the confiscation, all of these different things, the mass indebtedness. These are all people that were already on the verge of a mental breakdown, if not veterans that came back homeless, addicted to drugs because they didn't get the support that they needed. This is the same suffering that we're witnessing right now, but has been done all along. 1 million civilians in Iraq that Julian Assange, thanks to Bitcoin, was able to reveal on WikiLeaks, and the banks and financial institutions blockaded it and tried to wipe him out and smear campaign him through Keir Starmer in his career before he was installed to send all this money over to the military industrial complex, pretending that he's defending democracy, was used in order to smear, sexual violence campaigns on Julian Assange. People are suffering from mental illness after all this. This is psychological illness. Look at the numbers. These are record numbers of drug addiction, record numbers of prescription addiction, record numbers of suicide rates, record numbers of indebtedness, record numbers of all of this, mental illness, all sorts of stuff. At the same time as being under mass economic pressure because money's being stolen through the proof of weapons network. When people were traumatized by the lockdown and the forced things that ended up taking both of my parents' lives because they fell for being told that they're killing people if they don't inject themselves with that untested stuff. Can't prove it. I'm pretty sure what happened. There's an intuition here. People are barely holding on at the moment to their sanity. And they're having to watch this. This feels like the complete social engineering of people. And we know what they do to other countries. They're doing it on their own countries right now because this power structure has become stateless. There is no America First agenda. There is no European First agenda. There is no Britain First agenda. It's just pure gaslighting. And how do you control people that are at this stage? It's like, how much mental abuse can you put people through? It's like some kind of mass experiment that we're seeing. How much destruction can you gain? You took the people that were standing up against this and you told them, you're banning boycotting. You can't boycott Israel. They made it your right to boycott and not fund this thing. They banned it. They clamped down on protesters. They infiltrated the protests. They said, if you're supporting against this genocide, you're supporting terrorists and therefore you can be deported. They deported protesters. They infiltrated that. They shut down universities. They took heads of universities and rugby scrummed people to the ground and replaced them with those that are, and all they were doing is they were protesting against, we don't want our student tuition fees to be sent to Israel to fund genocide. And the whole time, the West, America, UK, Europe, Israel, ignoring international law. They were trialed as war criminals, plausible genocide. We saw all the cases. The entire world said Palestine needs to be free. America veto voted it and said, no, 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 pretending that they were trying to negotiate a deal when the CIA was there all along representing its corporate interest. They ignored international law. They didn't put any sanction instructions. They just ignored arrest warrants. So you're being told that the only strategy that works is the one that they're doing. Violence, genocide, murder, killing, mass destruction. You're sending out a signal that that's the strategy that you use because all the peaceful means no longer work. You can't peacefully protest. You can't boycott. And so what do you do when someone on the verge or the end decides to probably do either a false flag and was able to do that, or they did it genuinely? And they did it for political means because they believed that this was the only thing that they could come up with to stop having to watch children being mass murdered, burnt alive, killed, and all the atrocities that we've had to watch for almost 600 days. Could you blame someone? I'm not condoning it. It will be used against them. It's a bad strategy. But what do they do with that anyway? Now they suddenly think that this is a tool. This is a strategy. They're not talking about all the other people that have been killed. They haven't been talking about the murders that happened to Palestinian children earlier. What about the other types of murders that are happening? Suddenly, this one's got political leverage, so they can use it. They can use it to do exactly what they did in the UK. Manufacture civil unrest, divide and conquer, escalate within its own country. At the very same time as we're seeing billions and billions of dollars being sent to war criminals to commit crimes against humanity, and they're just defending them on the media. Congress claps like crazy. Standing ovations. They're basically signaling that lawless violence is the only legitimate strategy that they're using. So when somebody else decides to use it, I'm not justifying it. Stick with the law. I don't recommend anybody do this. But can you understand why they came up with that's the only thing that they've got left? Because they're manufacturing civil unrest. We've seen this before. The very same people that are willing to take down towers on their own people in order to get the Patriot Act and fund war. Because they don't care about you. They're fueling tensions. And they're exploiting the political leverage that comes from that. For them, it's just an opportunity. They don't care. They'll push anti-Semitism. They'll push Muslim hatred. They'll push Christian narratives, whatever they need to do. And all of that was manufactured for profit. And now we're entering into a multipolar world where we might be able to fight against it. We might be able to. The lesson that we're learning here is when people and countries have sovereignty, they're able to push back against it. When people don't have sovereignty, they end up with no economic power and a hostile takeover. So the lesson from this whole thing, when you combine this week in Bitcoin, this week in macro, this week in geopolitics, is just wake up, see what they're doing here. We need more and more people to understand this game. The game has always been divide and conquer, the very same strategies that they used on the global south, that they used on the Middle East, because they built enough economic power to fight back and remain sovereign. That's the only reason why we're getting a retreat. And the only thing that works here is when you can become sovereign enough so that you can become economically powerful enough that one day you can actually gain some power through your economic power to fight back against the system. And what do they want you to do when Bitcoin provided that tool for everybody? They said, own it with us. So that's the lesson. Boycott the Fed by owning Bitcoin. Boycott BlackRock by holding it in self-custody. Boycott the military-industrial complex by paying down your debt, not taking any new debt, and not borrowing against your Bitcoin so that they can margin call you and fund all this death, destruction, and war. Support multipolarity. And recognize that there is changes in capital, and you need to react to that. And if you stay addicted to a narrative that they've sent to you, it's all about divide and conquer. Because here's the reality of what's really happening. We are transitioning to a world where Bitcoin's sovereignty is giving people economic power to beat against this proof of weapons network. We are transitioning to a world where they don't care about you. They are weaponizing narratives in order to usher in the next wave of artificial intelligence and robotics so you don't have jobs. And you've got a small window to adjust to this and recognize that you need to get on the right side of history, and you need to build a plan for yourself and your family to embrace the fact that we're moving into artificial intelligence and robotics. That's happening. There's no stopping it. That's happening on a few fronts. If you fight it, there's no fighting it. You'll be wrecked at the end of it. So make sure you utilize it as an opportunity in order to make as much fiat currency as you can, and then save as much Bitcoin as you can so you build your power so that you can then spend local and you can actually use what is the real lesson here. If the government's not the power, who is the power? It's the multinational corporations, which is represented by the new Dutch East India Company, which has been represented by structures like BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard right now. But what do they listen to? The very same things why they're manufacturing consent that you don't do right now. Boycotting. Using your money when it costs them money, they listen. When we redirect the flow of money, they listen. That's the only thing that has worked. And engaging in the political process is not the right enemy. That's the PSYOP. It is actually the new Dutch East India Company, and they only listen to you becoming economically powerful, and the way you beat their system is Bitcoin. And the way you don't give them the power is holding it in self-custody. They'll create VC-backed shitcoins to try and end up with staking networks and various other things because they want you to give them the stake. We're swimming with sharks now, but this is the decentralization versus centralization. And so always remember, you're alive at one of the most interesting and exciting times in financial history. Some are going to get wrecked, others are going to do really well. It's by understanding who we're actually fighting against that we can do it with peace, love, and unity, because Bitcoin proof of work is providing the resistance for the proof of weapons network. And when we follow the money, we can get to the truth. And I'll keep doing that with Bitcoin, this week in Bitcoin, this week in macro, this week in geopolitics. Sorry for the sudden flip to the videos. I hope you learned something from it anyway, because they are manufacturing civil unrest. And when you see the patterns, you can beat the patterns. And all you need to do is not buy into what they're saying, look at what they're doing with their money. And Bitcoin was the gift that was given to us in order to protect yourself. That's why it's reaching new all-time highs. That's why they had to adjust to it. If you could share, subscribe, like, get this message out to as many people, we'll break it down. I'll do what I need to do. And I'd like you to get this message out to as many people as possible to protect themselves. Sign up at simondixon.com. Join my free newsletter. I'll keep coming back, and we'll try and keep doing it with peace.